Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka the Cancer Guy, and today we have a special guest. We have we have gone across the globe into a different continent. We're in the UK today. We have Sally Hurman visiting us from the UK to tell, what it's like as a caregiver and some of the things that she's gone through dealing with different types of blood cancers in her family. So let's bring in Sally Hurman. Sally, how are you?
Hi, Kenny. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be part of your podcast.
Oh, I am so grateful to have you on here. Such a privilege, Sally. I know that you're an advocate for different types of blood cancers, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to have you on here and to give your voice on what's going on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So Sally, talk to our listeners here. A lot of people are dealing with different types of blood cancers. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We had a gentleman on our show. Um,
Meryl, I saw.
yes, Merrill Hodge, and he was dealing with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and these things come up, and a lot of people, you don't know how to deal with that, right? You're not preparing yourself for that. You're enjoying your life, and I kind of got a little background about you. You've been here to California. You're quite the traveler. You and your husband, you get around. You guys used to hike quite a bit. So, tell me what it was like when you got the news.
It was the worst curveball. Any diagnosis of cancer for anyone will understand this. And if you haven't been through it, then I know that you'll certainly sympathize. We weren't expecting a diagnosis of blood cancer at all. Gav's family history is bowel cancer, and he'd had some stomach pains that had been ongoing for a while. And his oncologist said, Gav, you haven't got bowel cancer. You've had all the tests. I don't know where this pain's coming from. And he said, tell you what we'll do. We'll do a CT scan and we'll just discount anything else. So Gav just said, cool, okay, let's do it. And this was November time, 2014. So he had a CT scan and the results took a while to come back. So I was working that evening. And at this point, I would highly recommend that anyone who goes for just regular results on a CT scan doesn't go on their own, because Gav went on his own, and it was then he was told, we found a lymphoma, and neither of us knew what that meant. Gav came back, it was dark, it was late, he was in tears, it was icy outside, and we took the journey straight back to hospital because he'd gone deaf at the point of diagnosis. He said the room just span. He just lost his grip on listening. He couldn't take it in. He even bought the bit of paper home on a Post-it note, a lymphoma, just so he wouldn't forget. Wow. So it was terrifying because we weren't expecting it. And weirdly, he had blood tests previous to the CT scan that had come back completely clear, or as in normal. There was no worrying signs in his bloods. So to be diagnosed with a stage 4 blood cancer was shocking.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it is in the UK. Here, we have to wait for the diagnosis, right? You do the scan and whatnot, but it sounds like there they gave it to you right away.
Well, they said on that particular time, they said we found a lymphoma, we need to do more tests. So then it was a very long, drawn out procedure over Christmas where he had bone marrow biopsies, lymph node biopsies. I called it north, south, east and west at the front. And we didn't actually get the actual diagnosis. So we knew it was lymphoma and we knew it was blood cancer, but it was, you couldn't Google anything. Not that I would ever recommend anyone Google. Dr. Google is not our friend. So we throw our phones away. There's no point until this is what I call the free fall time, the free fall weeks. You're told you're ill. You don't know what's wrong with you. You've gone for tests and you are now in free fall. And you don't know if you're going to get a parachute. And that's exactly how it felt for us. We were just in free fall until the 2nd of January, when we walked into the doctor's office. And this is another reason why I like to speak about it, because the diagnosis, well, you'll know this, it sets you on a path. How you're delivered that that diagnosis really sets your mind on a path, and ours was horrendous. We walked in and he said, "Wow, Gav, I expect you've Googled it." And no, we hadn't Googled it. You told us not to, and we didn't know what to Google anyway. And he said, "Oh, well, I can't cure you. You've got stage 4 follicular non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's incurable. You've maybe got 5 to 8 years on a good wind." That was how the diagnosis was delivered. And I find it really hard even now to forgive that oncologist for that diagnosis. It took a long time to not think Gav was in immediate peril and was about to die.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Yeah,
my,
it was bad.
that's overwhelming. And when you're looking for someone to kind of help you out, that's the that's the bedside manner you got there, huh?
It was shot, honestly, Kenny. It was it was awful, and I think that's why I'm so passionate now to help people. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a mum and a wife over here in the UK doing my thing, and I have since found out so much about follicular lymphoma, even down to the diagnosis. You have to wait quite a while sometimes for this diagnosis, and I've since found out if you've got a raging aggressive type of blood cancer, you'll be called back within hours. But if you've got an indolent blood cancer that's slow growing and non-aggressive, they have to grow this stuff, don't they, on a petri dish.
Yeah.
And it takes weeks for it to do its thing because it's so slow. Some blood cancers, you can see them under the microscope, can't you? It's just like doing that. I just always liken to Gavs. It's out the back going, "Oh yeah, well, I'll do it in a minute." It's a slow thing. So I think that's, again, now I understand why the 3-week wait was the 3-week wait, because they discounted everything else. And at the end of the day, that's what they're left with. That's what's grown, on the dish. So even understanding why you have to wait, that wasn't explained to us. We
Yeah.
just thought, oh, they just can't, a bit slow. It was over Christmas.
Oh my goodness. So,
Yeah.
so here you are, you're getting ready to enjoy your family as close to the holidays where people, gather together and enjoying themselves. And then you get hit with this horrendous news,
Yeah. And the
so,
kids were young at the time.
oh,
They were 11, 16, 18. They were, our youngest was 11. Father Christmas is coming no matter what. And so we smiled when people were looking and cried when people weren't.
yeah.
So it was horrendous. The Christmas was, you normally put on a bit of weight at Christmas and eat all the chocolates. We both lost weight that Christmas just through worry.
So what goes through your mind at this point, right? Because obviously the the news from the physician kind of gave you where there's no hope. That's what it kind
Yeah.
of sounded like. How did
Yeah.
you transition that? And how did you, take that information in and go, no, we're gonna do something different than that.
Well, we're lucky here. We've got Macmillan nurses, and our Macmillan nurse, I put it that she hoovered up the debris from the fallout from our oncologist's delivery of the diagnosis. So she sat us down and she just explained, with follicular lymphoma, the reason it's incurable is not because there's no hope. It's not, you're not going to die of it anytime soon. It's not a terminal diagnosis. And she explained, actually, I after we had a chat with her, I thought, right, how can I reset our minds?
Mhm.
How can I just think, you've got this thing hanging over you that at some point it could transform into something aggressive, in which case he would need treatment immediately, or he'd need a stem cell transplant. He did have immunotherapy. I'll come on to that in a sec. But I thought, how can we reset this? So I thought about other diseases and illnesses that are incurable, which I came down to. Gav wasn't that impressed because he said, "Sal, it's not asthma," but in my head, it works, and it might help someone listening. So asthma is a very serious illness, isn't it? And if you're not treated correctly at the time of an attack, it could be fatal. So it's incurable, but you probably won't die of it because you'll be treated at the point of an attack. Follicular lymphoma, it's similar. You live completely normally between attacks. If it raises its head, you'd have treatment to squash it back down again and carry on. And I think with every other cancer that you know of, or most others, you'll know more than me. If you're diagnosed at stage 4 and they're saying we're not going to treat you, you kind of think, oh, that's it. I'm beyond treating. There's no hope. But with follicular lymphoma, it wasn't affecting, and it was in his tummy and slightly in his bone marrow, but it wasn't affecting him. In fact, his tummy pains have since been diagnosed as something else. It's nothing to do with cancer. So it was found by accident. Most people's follicular lymphoma is found by accident, and it's usually stage 4 when it's found, just meaning it's in 2 places. So if it's not affecting you, you don't need treatment. Think of the asthma analogy again. There's no point puffing when you're not having an attack, because it's not going to stop the next attack. So all of that, plus thinking, well, actually, we're all terminal. Every single one of us will die of something. So that's your terminal bit sort of dealt with. And obviously, if you have a terminal cancer diagnosis, it's a completely different ballgame. But that's how I reset it in my mind, that he's going to be checked out. It's not terminal. It's completely treatable, and treatable when he needs it, rather than everyone jump on it like you would with a normal stage 4 cancer in your body if you were diagnosed tomorrow with something. So it turns everything you think you know about cancer on its head, and it's quite exhausting telling your family and everyone he's got stage 4 cancer, but it's not terminal and he doesn't need treatment yet.
I can only imagine. You're like, you get hit with that news, but then what? Right.
Yeah, now we're not going to treat you. And in fact, we did get treatment. So he was on watch and wait for a few months. And so that's, well, you might call it active monitoring, you might call it watch and wait. So basically, they just keep an eye on you, do blood tests, have an appointment with your hematology oncologist every few months. But we found that quite hard to cope with, because he was at that point still having tummy pain. So our oncologist said, you know what, let's do some immunotherapy. So you'll know this, but the frontline treatment for follicular lymphoma is a chemotherapy called R-CHOP. There's also a slightly less harsh one, I think, called R-bendamustine, and the R stands for rituximab, and that's the immunotherapy. So that's what Gav had. He had immunotherapy for 2 years, which is a lot less hard on his system. Mm-hmm. And it squashed it right back down. Our shark's back down sleeping again.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. As you went through the immunotherapy, as you're getting prepared for this, and you found this to be, okay, let's take this direction. How did he tolerate that?
We were both quite scared, because it's not particularly called chemotherapy here when you have the immunotherapy, although I know it is in other countries. So we walked out of the doctor's office with your chemotherapy record, and you just look at it and go, okay, things have got serious. He had 4 infusions, so every week for a month he would go in and be hooked up to the drip. It was a 9-hour procedure. I think we were in hospital probably 12 hours each time we went. And the first time he did have a reaction, he had, where his cancer was found was in his, is it called your mesentery? It's your mesentery, anyway, up in your tummy. And that's where he reacted. He had terrible tummy pains. They had to slow the drip right down, and they were expecting some sort of reaction. So his reaction, in my world, I just imagine, well, that's where the cancer is, and it's going straight in, and it's going to, eat it all like Pac-Man. But once they got that sorted out, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th were much better, and they upped his antihistamine and just knocked him straight out. So he slept through most of it.
Nice. Now he's the one going through the treatment, but I'm sure that stress for you to see your husband going through something like that has to be through the roof. So
Yeah.
how are you, what's going through your mind? And then what are you doing to manage some of those things that are coming in? Because you're, like you said, you're a wife, a mom of 3.
I'm quite proactive. So when he was knocked out, Zonko, having his treatment, I did start to think, right, what would save his life if he needed his life? If this rituximab doesn't work, and it ended up being a 2-year course, The rest of them were done just injections into his tummy. So it was much quicker, and it made him feel less ill. It was in and out within 2 hours. And we were lucky to have it offered as an injection. Some people still have to have the drip if they're having the 2-year course. So I had a lot of time to think, and I did think, like, what else? What is this with blood cancer? Why were his bloods all normal, and he's got stage 4 blood cancer? How does that happen? What could save somebody's life? Because years before, let's rewind to when I was about 25, my uncle was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and he died 2 weeks after diagnosis. I don't think he even managed to get as far as day 2 of chemo, and he died. It was a really aggressive version of that type of leukemia. And I remember being terrified of blood cancer. Whenever I heard anyone talk about it, I stick my head in the sand, because if you get blood cancer, you die. And of course, that's not true, but that's what happened to him. So that was my yardstick. So I was terrified that would happen to Gav. So I started being brave and not Googling, but through my filter of my Macmillan nurse, who I spoke to a lot, and safe places online, and also our doctors and nurses, I started to really look at stem cells and stem cell transplants as it might be in our future, that if he relapsed and chemo didn't work or whatever, he's young, he's 50 now, he was diagnosed at 45. A stem cell transplant could be in our future. So I started being quite positive and looking at, how do stem cells work? How can somebody save somebody else's life by means of a stem cell transplant? And I was, even just the words gave me the heebie-jeebies. I didn't even know what the process was. I thought, oh God, that sounds like some horrible operation with nerves and in your back or something. And I just thought, okay, let's look at it. So I did.
So that, looking at the different options that Galvin may have needed, kind of helped you with your mindset as far as calming down and not thinking the worst. Because I mean, as you brought out your uncle, knowing what he had and going, oh my goodness, this can happen to my husband,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so being able to be proactive was one of the great things that you've done, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also, I do feel like the further we got from the diagnosis, and Gav wasn't going downhill, he was good. He was working in between treatments, all sorts. The further we got from the diagnosis, the more we trusted his body again. So every single time that we got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit further from that awful day,
Yeah.
we trusted his body again. And that definitely helps up here, that nothing bad's happened. We're still clinging on to our little life raft, and we haven't sunk yet.
Yeah.
So I think, if something really bad happens, like a cancer diagnosis, you can't think too far ahead. You can't think, well, we're going to go on holiday in 3 years' time. You have to learn, bring it in. Let's just do next week. He's up and running. He's at work. He's fine. He's having his treatment. Let's just step by step. And I think that helped too. Just not learn to be patient and don't just go straight off to the end game, because it's very easy. In fact, I know that I found it really hard to sleep, because at night, when everyone's quiet and your mind goes over, you can almost indulge yourself, and your mind will play tricks on you, and you will go straight to worst case scenario. You'll go straight to, that's it.
Sure.
He's dead. He's gone. And you have to remind yourself of your now. That's not happened. It's nowhere near happening. Don't let your mind indulge yourself. So I came up with this. I came up with a sleep technique, and I taught myself how to not worry at night. I've written it down as a blog post to help other people, and it really works. You just fill your mind with stuff, build a wall, do whatever you want to do. Just fill your mind and don't let those bad thoughts come in, because that's the time, isn't it, when we all worry. Everything's worse at night, isn't it? If you wake up at 3 a.m, things are bad, aren't they? They're really bad. By 8 o'clock, you're like, oh God, I don't know what I was worried about.
you're not alone in that. And that's good for my listeners, right? I mean, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're trying to get through those dark thoughts, it's as you're what you're saying is it's good to stay in the moment. And then what else were you able to do to keep you present?
It's the whole thing of don't go fast forwarding. You just can't fast forward. You as a human, we always just try and go, yeah, but what if, and you have to stay present. You have to know your truth, know what is happening right now. This is what's happening, this is the treatment, da da da. You can't make stuff up. It's a friend who's an amazing psychotherapist said to me, you can't make stuff up because the worrying won't protect you from if the worst case scenario happens.
Mm,
Worrying isn't going to protect you from that. It's just going to make you tireder when you get there. So if you can somehow learn to shutter yourself off from all the fear, and it's the anxiety, it's 100% anxiety. If you can find some mechanisms to help you cope, so you're not constantly going straight to worst case scenario, I found that helped for me. And for me, it was nighttime worries, and that's why I learnt my little routine of I build a wall around myself. And your wall can be anything. It can be big polystyrene bricks. It can be just proper little builder's bricks. It can be made of balloons. It can be anything you like. And you build the wall. And that if a worry comes in from the side, you build the wall at the side. And then you build the wall from that side. And then if the DPD delivery man comes and delivers you a worry, it's the wrong side of the wall. It can't get to you. So that's how I coped. And I think by keeping my mind busy, eventually you go to sleep, don't you? You end up in a weird dream world and you drop off, and it takes a lot of doing. It takes a lot of doing because your mind wants to indulge all the fear and you can't let it.
sure. Sally, it's been said, as caregivers, whether it be friends or wife or some family, sometimes seeing our loved ones getting diagnosed with cancer, there's a guilt that
Mm.
comes over us. You
Yeah.
know, did you experience any of that?
It's a guilt, but it's for me, it so as Gav's wife, I can't speak for Gav because his cancer journey is his cancer journey, but as his wife who loves him and has loved him for years, I feel like it doesn't matter which one of us was diagnosed. He would disagree because he'd say, how can you know how I feel? But I feel sometimes I feel a guilt even speaking about it because it's not my cancer, but it's our story. So I have to get over that because by talking about it, by talking about the elephant in the room, by saying Voldemort out loud, we're going to desensitize it. We're going to make it less scary. And anyone who's been in that lonely boat, all you want to do is find someone else who's in the same boat as you. So yeah, it is a sort of guilt, but to me, it wouldn't have mattered which one of us it was. But I know as Gav, the one with the diagnosis, he would not see it like that. But I can only see it from my side because I'm the one, I'm this side.
For sure.
It's difficult. And I'm sure other partners might say the same. They'll feel so strongly that it wouldn't matter which one of you had it. But I would imagine the one with a diagnosis would say, ah, poppycock, you don't know how it feels.
You're not alone in that though. Sally, a lot of the loved ones and the caregivers, they take that on, and it is you and them going through the journey
Yeah.
together. And that's why I say to people, it's so important to gather a team, because you're not alone in that. And though we know it was Gavin that's going through the treatments and whatnot, but you're right there, and it's as if you're going through treatments as well. So it's very common, and it's nice to know that you felt that a certain type of way, and being able to be there for him during that time.
Yeah, I mean, if like we've got to this stage now where he just sees his hematologist about every 9 months to a year, and I still want to go. I'm still the one asking the questions, taking the book, writing the things down. And last time he said, I'm going to go on my own. I'm like, how can you? You can't do that. And of course he can, and he did. So one thing that I found really helpful, I don't know whether it's a good time to say this, but
Sure.
we have this notebook here,
Mm.
and we've been writing in this for no, correction, I've been writing in it for 6 years. Every single conversation we have on the phone, every single appointment, and it's really useful because you remember stuff differently. And if you've written it down fresh out of an appointment, like Gav's gone, we didn't say that, and I'm like, hang on a minute, I think you'll find he did, I wrote it down. But what's funny is the appointment he went to on his own, I said, right, you've got the book, here's the pencil in it, write everything down. He came back with what? Just the date of the next appointment. That's it. Just the date.
Too much, Sally. It's too much, right?
Too much. So I do feel like I call myself his Rottweiler, Kenny, because I feel like I can chat. You know, you found this out. But when we went to appointments, that oncologist who gave us the terribly worded diagnosis, he was the kind of oncologist, hematologist that he, how can we put this? He was just really old school. And if I had a question, I could feel my voice go. You shouldn't feel like crying the moment you walk into the room with a question. You shouldn't feel like you can't ask it. So another coping mechanism I've got now is I ask the question, even if it's the most stupid small question. By the time you get home, if you haven't asked it, suddenly it's a huge question, and you really wish you'd spoken up. So on one of the earlier appointments, I'd sit there with my book, with my tied up, tight little voice, desperately trying not to cry, to get it out, because Gav was so like, let's just go in and out, just done with it. We need to talk to this guy. We need to find stuff out. And in one of the appointments, it was probably 18 months along from the diagnosis, I plucked up courage to ask for a second opinion. And that was big, because I did get told off in the car on the way home. However, we were referred to one of the top guys at the Royal Marsden here, and it was him who reset our minds and said, Gav, looking at your pathology, looking at how you've reacted so well to rituximab, looking at your age and your flippy score, which is done on your age and your health and stuff like that, I don't think we're going to have a problem. And if we do, we can fix it. And so anyone really struggling with their diagnosis or their physician, pluck up courage and ask for a second opinion, because you might find it's worded differently and you can then cope mentally far, far better.
You know, and that's a good thing, because I think a lot of people are a little nervous to get that second opinion, you know.
You almost feel like it's dismissive or something. You're not trusting the doctor that's there in front of you. You feel like if you upset him, he's not going to treat you as well or something. But no, that's not the case at all, is it?
No, it's not. And it helps with peace of mind too, right?
Hugely, yeah. To hear the top guy at the Marsden say, you're going to be okay, and go away, and probably when you come back as an old man, we'll sort you out. That, you know, it just, for Gav's type of lymphoma, this is for follicular lymphoma, it was a huge relief.
Sure. Now let me ask you this, you know, going through this, getting a different opinion and then getting that type of news is a night and day experience, right?
Oh, completely, yeah. So I felt like we had 2 very dark years, and the lights came on with that second opinion, and we still, you know, he was still having treatment at that point, and we were still in and out of hospital, and he still had symptoms and tweaks and pains, and we never are you, I think with any cancer diagnosis, you're never okay all the time, and every single ache and pain, you're like, are you okay? What's this? And you write it down, and, you know, so it's never quite as simple as you're ill or you're better. With a incurable cancer diagnosis, it's ongoing. I'm like a hawk. I watch him like a hawk. You've got a lump in your neck. Well, you know, you're all right. So it's never black and white, but this guy definitely turned the light on, and it was a far nicer place to be.
For sure. You know, let me ask you, since you've gone on this journey, how has your team, I call it the team, right? The people that have supported you along the way, how has that grown? How has that looked from when he first got diagnosed till current?
So the doctor I was telling you about has since retired. And we've got an amazing hematologist, oncologist now called Dr. Stella, who is fabulous. I email her secretary if ever I need anything, and we sort it out. And I couldn't have done that with the other doctor. As far as the team goes, we've stepped back because the treatment finished 4 years ago. During that 2 years, we became so familiar. You would walk into St. Martha's ward and you'd be, this is nice. Whoever would think that would be nice to go into pre-cancer? I would not even want to know the name of the oncology ward, let alone go in and think it was nice. But it was so comforting. It was so warm. The nurses, we always had the same. We always had Cherry. She'd always do the injection. And they would say, hi, Gav, come through. Hi, Sally, cup of tea. So you feel so cocooned in this these people, I call them angels. I say they've literally got their wings tucked in their knickers. They are so nice. And you feel so safe. You're sitting there. He's in a chair. There's a lady over there with a cold cap on having her breast cancer treatment behind the curtain. And you actually feel like you're in the nicest place in the world. And when the treatment ends, I felt like we were little sparrows being pushed off the ledge. Go on, fly. I mean, we can't go. We like it here. So the team were absolutely vital, just vital to your mental well-being, your feeling of safety. And the phone number in the book, just ring up if you've got a problem or if your temperature spikes or anything. But now we're 4 years past that. So we're back to Dr. Stella every 9 months or so.
Awesome. And let me ask you, Sally, it's nothing like having that comfort, having that support. But now as you've gone through it, here you are 4 years past. How do you celebrate life now?
Oh, crikey. Everything changes. I think when you get a diagnosis, suddenly all the little things just fall. Everyone says this is such a cliche, but it's so true. That cliches are true things, aren't they? That's why they're said a lot. Everything just falls away. The silly things you were worried about, or the people that you were worried about, silly stuff. I always say it's people who matter, not things. You do get, I would say, lax. When Gav was first given like his first clear scan of, it's not gone, it's just asleep, we can't see it move, so you're good to go. You think, oh, I'm going to grasp every day. But you do become, we're 4 years on now, we're lax, we're moaning about work, and we don't want to go out, it's raining. Yeah, that cancer diagnosis comes back, bang, you're outside in the rain, you don't care what the weather's doing, you're just outside enjoying life. And you have to remember that. I almost say, we're really lucky. We got the clean end of a dirty stick. And, we're holding on to that clean. Can you see me?
Yeah.
We're holding on to that clean end. And you have to remember that. You have to remember that dirty stick can spin at any time. And you got the dirty end. So we're just grateful. We're just so grateful that in a way, of course, we didn't have this in our lives hanging over our heads, but let's look at the positive of it. I feel like we've stepped through some invisible shield and we can see the point of everything. Feel lucky that we can see that. And I've read that a lot of people say that when they've had a diagnosis and they've survived, or they are surviving and they're thriving, they almost say, I'm the person I am because of this. And I'm lucky that I've got this in my life, or I wouldn't be this person. Yeah. And that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
Yeah. But it also helps you to appreciate things that you weren't able to before, right?
100%. Even just like walking the dog in the rain, you just think, aren't I lucky? A friend a couple of years ago, she died of bowel cancer, and she would be loving being able to walk her dog in the rain. So it slots everything into such clarity. And I'd rather it wasn't in our lives, but if it's going to be, let's make room for it and let's find the good bits, because aren't we lucky? There are good bits. And it's almost like I liken it to living with a shark. We're all swimming around in our lovely swimming pools of life. And unfortunately, we know that Gav's got a shark in his pool, and it came up and it snapped him, but it's asleep again down there now. And any one of us could be swimming above a shark. We just don't know it. So you've got to make the most of it, haven't you?
Oh, Sally, I love your illustrations.
I'm full of analogies.
I love it. I love it. And it's so nice because I think so many people need to hear this. Sometimes, Sally, I've seen this over the 20 years I've been in radiation oncology. The patients, they get stuck and you don't know
Yeah.
how to move. And so to hear how, you're able to move forward and then celebrate life, and
Yeah.
finding things to be grateful for is so important.
And I think with this kind of weird, incurable, treatable, you've got cancer, we'll never call you clear kind of diagnosis, my default reaction was to swim against the tide. Why us? Go back, go back, go back to how it was. Let's go up, swim upstream, because we want it back to how it was. We liked how it was. How dare this come in?
Mm,
But again, that just makes you so tired. Once we both accepted it and made space for it, it's the unwelcome dinner guest, but you're going to have to make a space for it because he's not going anywhere.
yeah,
Once you've done that and you've bobbed back down the stream, you're not swimming against the tide anymore. Everything becomes easier. And I think acceptance, there's no hurry in that, is there? You'll know this from your patients. They don't want it. They just, why me? Why me? And once you start thinking, well, why not me? It's 1 in 2 of us in the world, going to be someone, and accept it and make space. And you can't spend your whole mindset wishing it didn't happen, because it did.
yeah.
And you can't live like that. You just can't. It's too tiring. You
Yeah.
have to accept it.
So tell us, what are some of the wonderful things that you and your husband love to do together? What is something that just makes your heart so happy?
Oh, escape to Cornwall. So Cornwall's on the west coast, and he's a surfer. He's a really good surfer, quite accomplished surfer. So he takes the surfboard, I take the dog, we go to the beach, and that is where we just go. We'd love to live there one day, but who knows? It's 5-hour drive and etc. We've got the children, so that, yeah, just being together in Cornwall. That is, you'll find us on a beach in Newquay at our absolute happiest with a cinnamon bun and a coffee. It's quite simple.
Enjoying yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Something about the ocean that's just so rejuvenating, right?
Yeah, so grounding, especially for Gav. He plugs himself when he goes in the ocean and surfs. He comes back a different man, a new man. It's refreshed him.
Wow.
And when he was having treatment, I don't think, you've got really rubbish immune system. I'm not sure you should be swimming in the sea. And he just says, let me do what I need to do. So again, I had to back off and go, if he wants to go surfing, that's actually really important. Let him do. He knows his limitations. I'll just stand at the side and panic.
So how are the kids? How did they deal with kind of going through that? Were they too young to really understand, or how did you prepare them for that?
That's such a good question, Kenny, because we didn't tell them, but pre-Christmas, we didn't tell them, they didn't have a clue. We just carried on as normal. It wasn't until the diagnosis we thought, right, now we need to tell them, because otherwise we'd say, Daddy's got cancer, but we don't know what type really.
Mm,
And that would have been a really rubbish Christmas, wouldn't it? So the guidelines are, make time for your children and sit down and turn the television off and all have a family chat. And that's not how we did it at all. They'd been back to college and school, and one came home early from school. He was 11, and he came into the kitchen, and we just said, we were standing there. I was leaning against that oven and Gav was leaning against the countertop. And we said, oh, Tobes, Dad had an operation, because we did say that Dad had a little operation, because obviously he'd had his lymph node biopsies. He's in quite a lot of pain. So, Dad had his little operation. They did find something a bit nasty, and it's a type of cancer. And he's like this, what? And we said, but it's okay, because they can fix it, and Daddy will be, probably, hopefully he'll be fine, and blah, blah, blah. I can't remember how he worded it, but his question, and this is the important bit, he said, did Dad cry? And at that point, Gav was honest and said no, because he'd done a lot of crying, but not on that day. He said, no, don't, darling, I didn't cry. Is your doctor worried about you? No, darling, he's not worried about me. Okay, that's fine. Can I have a bag of crisps? And the other two came in, and it was very similar. And because they were older, they were at college. I said, look, this is the diagnosis, but can you promise me you won't Google? And I personally think that when you've got any age of children, obviously you have to adjust how you say it to whatever age they are. But they need to feel safe. They need to know that you're not going to lie to them or omit important information. If they trust you, they will feel safe. So I made it so clear to them. I said, don't ever Google this. You don't need to. Just ask me. We will never lie to you. Dad will never be in danger and you won't know about it. So we just made it so clear that they could trust us, come to us, ask us, and we would tell them the whole truth. And that's how it's been ever since. 6 years on, they're cool. They're really cool. In fact, they don't talk about it much, but when we do, they're cool with it, and they appreciated the way we told them. 6 years on, with hindsight, they were like, no, that was good. You didn't need to sit us. That would have been scary if you'd have sat us down in a room and turned the telly off and banished the crisps.
Right?
Yeah, so that was important to us, to be completely honest.
Absolutely.
So,
And that's important for the listeners too, because,
yeah.
Sally, so many times, what I have seen, there have been cases where the patient does not want to talk to the family about it, and it's in secret, and you're going through that by themselves, and or they just don't know how to. I mean, this is something that no one prepares for, and you never think that that's going to happen to you. So you know to hear how you handled it, what great tips for those that may be going through and recently diagnosed. So thank you for that.
I think it's probably easier at the point of fear and diagnosis with the adults to not tell the children. It's probably easier because then it doesn't, it's not it is happening, but it's not happening.
Yeah.
But I think with hindsight, if the children know that you haven't told them something major, the trust goes, and they need to trust you. Otherwise, they're going to be off to Google. They're going to, when they do find out, they'll be like, why didn't you tell us? Why? And you're going to have to be accountable for that. So it could be easier at the time, but what you're doing is creating a bit of a tsunami for later down the line when they're asking why.
Yeah. I asked this quite a bit, and it's important to me and for the listeners to hear it. But, Sally and Gavin, they were going about their lives a certain way prior to diagnosis, right? And then you get diagnosed, and we just talked about understanding the things that are important. What have you guys done differently now as a family, as a husband, as a wife? What's different?
Well, Gav was running his own business at the time, and he still is, but he implemented straight away someone to help run the business, because we both think stress doesn't help. It
Yeah.
doesn't help it's not healthy for you, is it, stress?
No.
And whether that's got anything to do with a cancer diagnosis, who knows? But I believe stress, if you eliminate stress, you eliminate risk. Your immune system is having to cope with less if you're less stressed. So we were lucky he was in the situation where he could bring someone in and they could help. And go on nice holiday, do nice stuff, appreciate each other, go out for nice meals, don't sweat the small stuff. That's what we're really lucky. We're 6 years on from the diagnosis and 4 years on from the end of treatment. So I can promise to anyone that is diagnosed with follicular lymphoma, it won't always be the first thing you think of in the morning and the last thing you think of at night. You will always think of it in the day, but it won't wake you up like a bam, So I think acceptance, appreciating your life,
Yeah.
trying to get help where you can get help, and being really kind to yourself and not trying to do a million things. Don't look too far forward. They're the things. And, this lockdown, we've just had a year of lockdown, like probably everywhere in the world. We've had a lovely year with the kids have been at home, and we really enjoy our family.
Yes. I think I even seen a post where you went out and the rain was hitting you on the face, and you're just like
Yeah.
enjoying it,
Yes. Yeah. Just think how lucky we are to have had that shark rise up and it didn't take him. That's, we are incredibly lucky. And I know, like, we didn't ring a bell at the end of treatment or anything. Gav couldn't bear the thought of it. He said, I'm not ever going to be cured. I can't bear the thought of that's the end of treatment. Ta-da! Everyone crack open the champagne. That just meant he was okay up to now.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he'll be okay going forward. So we're very respectful and we're very humble in his diagnosis. We're never going to presume it'll be okay. And equally, we're not always going to think the worst and just look at the sword above our heads. You can't live death by a thousand cuts either.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you put it. It's like asthma, and all it's you deal with it when it comes to an attack, but right now it's dormant, and
Yeah.
you enjoy your life as much as possible. And that's one of the things that cancer coaching is important. One of the things that happens is, like you said, as you were getting treatments, you like, I love it here. The support is there, everyone is friendly. And then after, it's like, okay, see you later.
Yeah.
And
Bye. We don't need you anymore.
right.
We do.
And everyone goes, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And
So
that's
this is where you come in.
And that's where coaching helps, because it talks about, the way you started, it was not the way you're going to end up. And maybe it's a new path, and maybe some things that you've always thought about, but you never gotten to, and the things and the values that we have in our lives, right? Because we all were growing up with some type of value. And so you bring those things together and you come up with something that's amazing. And, because life is appreciated differently at that point, right?
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head. It's like you've been given X-ray vision on life. And actually having someone coach you through that as you leave the oncology department. We don't have anything like that here, and it would have been amazing to have someone to help you process it all,
Yeah.
post-traumatic and all that. What just happened,
For sure. For sure. Sally, it's such a privilege to have you on the show. And thank you so much for joining us here at All Talk Oncology.
It's been my absolute pleasure. It's I wish it wasn't my specialist subject.
Yeah. You know, but how many people are you going to be able to help at this point? That's the amazing part about it.
I hope that anyone listening will take what they need from what we've spoken about, and it might reset their minds earlier than our minds were reset, because I would hate anyone to be going through particularly the same diagnosis as Gav, because that's the only one I really, really know about, and feel lost, alone, hopeless, and confused as well, confused and scared. So I really hope our discussion has helped someone out there to know it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay, and you'll be a different, changed, better person.
For sure. Thank you for that. Again, we want to thank Sally Hurman for joining us here at All Talk Oncology, all the way from the UK. I tell you, All Talk Oncology is having a global impact. We're so excited about that. This is exactly what we want. This is our vision. This is our plan, is to go global and impact people who are going through cancer, because cancer doesn't discriminate. It is all across the world, right? And so we're going to talk about some of the gems that Sally spoke about. Sally talked about, if you have kids, you don't want to break that trust by lying to them. You want to tell your kids what is going on, but not in a way that is going to overwhelm them with emotion, right? You don't want to do that. You want to give it to them in a way that they can digest it, that they know things are going to be okay. You want to create security for your kids. And so I love the way she said that, is you don't want to lie to them because they trust you, but you let them know, don't Google it, because Google can be overwhelming. It can be fearful. You don't want to search what the cancer may be, is basically what she was saying. Don't search it. Talk to mommy and daddy about this, and we'll tell you, we'll be honest with you about what's going on. But she didn't want to overwhelm them with information about what the cancer may be, right? Keep them in the moment. They trust you. And you know, as a parent, you need to give them the information as needed in order for them to not only feel included, but to know that things are going to be okay, if that's the case, right? And so, as a parent, you know your situation and the diagnosis. How you ration that out to your kids is extremely important. I thought that was a gem that she talked about. Another thing she said is the stress, right? We hear about stress kills, stress is overwhelming on the body. And she says, you know what? Keep the stress down, allow your body to heal. And so when you think about allowing your body to heal and what it's going through, you may be going through treatments, you may be having chemo, I may have had surgery. Your body needs time to heal. So to stress over what could happen or looking too far forward is not what you need at this moment. What you need is to try to keep the stress down, allow your body to heal, allow your immune system to fight off any infections or anything that may be uh, potentially harming to you. You're going through something at this time that's rough. And so stress, we need to keep that down. And I love the way she said that. Another thing she said is stay in the moment, right? She said that, you don't want to be too far out. You don't want to fast forward into something. And if you recall what she said, in the middle of the night, she would wake up and think about what could potentially happen. And it may not even happen at all, right? But the thought of what could happen, it overwhelmed her. And so she had to learn how to build a wall in order to block those things out so that she would not overwhelm herself with things that may not even happen. And she likened it. I loved her analogy. She said it's like an asthma attack, right? You don't give a breathing treatment before the attack comes, right? It's when the asthma attack happens that you give the breathing treatment. So the same thing, you want to not look too far in the future and think about what could happen. Stay in the moment, uh, and don't overwhelm yourself. And so I thought that was an amazing part. Another thing she said was about X-ray vision. Having cancer is like an X-ray vision in life. It highlights what's important. Everything prior to being diagnosed with cancer, you know, was not important now as far as what you're dealing with. And so she says that cancer was like an X-ray vision. It gave her and highlighted what was important to her and her family. And, I hope that you can take that away, being able to find things that are important to you and your family and why you're here. Things are not important. What's important is those that are surrounding by you, that are giving you love. So I hope those gems help you out. There's so many more that she gave us, but those are the ones that I wanted to share. And thank you so much, Sally Herman from the UK. Thank you so much for joining us here on All Talk Oncology, and thank you for listening. And then I say to all the listeners that are listening here, you are not alone in this. We are in this together. I am Kenny Perkins, aka the Cancer Guy, and again, I'm out.